What's up, Wolverines? I'm Alfredo Diaz.
And I'm Adrian Fraga. And if you want to win this week, well, guess what? You're in the right place. Welcome back to Waiver Wire.
Yeah, and this week's special guest host is Jose Saralukian. Jose, what do you think of Week 6?
For me, it was not that good of a weekend since I'm a big Dolphins fan, and I also kind of root for the Lions on the side. And both of them had really embarrassing losses, especially the Dolphins. And yeah, it wasn't really that good of a weekend for me.
Yeah, I mean, you're 1-11 on the year, and also being a Michigan fan, it's not that good for any football team that you root for. But what do you think of Week 6?
So, funny story. But watching the Dolphins lose in London in the morning
Against the 0-5 Jacksonville Jaguars.
the Jacksonville Jaguars,
who had lost 20 straight games.
in a Denny's is not the place I pictured. Mainly, I didn't really predict this at all, but it was not a good weekend.
No, it wasn't. The Dolphins obviously did not have a good week.
It's gonna be a running gag.
Yeah, unfortunately. The jersey that you're wearing has never looked so appalling to me. But last week on Waiver Wire, in terms of our picks, it's now the fourth week that we've instituted the crown, and I'm happy to say that mine outperformed Fraga's.
Your boy went 0-3. What can I say? I did make risky takes, but you got to gamble every now and then, and clearly I have a problem. But we will be giving out the crown of the week to Fredo. Congratulations on your efforts, and you will not be remembered for your greatness.
Yeah, I went 3 for 3, so me and you are basically a normal fantasy player combined. But let's get right into it. Jose, who's your pickup of the week?
My pickup of the week is Amon-Ra St. Brown, the receiver for the Detroit Lions. I think his volume has gone up a lot in his rookie season compared to his Week 1 stats. He's had 3 straight games where he has over 7 targets, which is really impressive. The other receivers who have been competing with him for targets on that Detroit Lions team, Tyrell Williams and Quintez Cephas, are both out. And so besides Amon-Ra St. Brown, you really only have TJ Hawkinson and Khalif Raymond in competition for targets. So I think Amon-Ra St. Brown has a bright future for this weekend, for the rest of the season, really.
And we always look for rookies, especially receivers and running backs, to be a little bit better on the back end of the season than the front end. And the fact that he's already getting looks of a wide receiver 1 or 2 on a team is definitely encouraging for fantasy owners, especially because he's so shifty with the ball in his hands.
Yeah, but I will say the Lions receiving corps is nowhere near among the top receiving groups in the league.
Or maybe more like nowhere near among.
This is why you're not getting the crown next week. But I will say that everyone expected them to target more of a elite kind of receiver in the draft a little earlier. But the fact that Amon-Ra St. Brown fell to them in the 4th was practically a steal. So I think Amon-Ra is very talented. He has so much potential. And I really do think he has the opportunity. I thought from the get-go he could be the wide receiver 1 on that team as long as they have those issues at receiver. So I can definitely see where you're coming from.
And absolutely, Fraga, who are you picking up this week?
Well, I love how Jose had actual stats. And I'm usually a stat guy to back myself up. But I'm going purely based off gut feeling. My pick of the week is Marlon Mack. Marlon Mack is currently a 3rd stringer. What? But he was a starting caliber, and I believe still is a starting caliber running back, and will be traded sometime before the trade deadline. The trade deadline is November 2nd, and teams are going to need running backs. We've seen a lot of running backs early in the year. It's only week 6. A lot of starting running backs have already gone down for a good remainder of the season. So I expect Marlon Mack to be on the trade block, and teams are already interested and have hit up the Colts to see the availability of the guy. So there's a real possibility that this guy can be a difference maker.
I wouldn't be surprised if the Niners or the Browns, maybe the Dolphins, the Texans, if they traded for him to get a little bit more depth. Even the Jaguars, who Carlos Hyde hasn't really panned out, and Marlon Mack could be a legit RB2, low-end RB2, or a good depth play for the rest of the year.
Yeah, I mean, I have Nick Chubb in a few leagues, and he's out. So I think the Browns, with their losses at running back due to injuries, I think the Browns are definitely a team that I could see Marlon Mack succeed on.
Absolutely. And my pickup of the week, I'm actually staying with the rookie wide receiver theme that Jose laid out before, is going to be Rashad Bateman. Rashad Bateman got drafted in the 1st round to the Baltimore Ravens. Now, Rashad Bateman has only played 1 game. He had an injury that he was put on IR from the beginning of the season, but he had 6 targets in his first game, and apparently he wasn't fully healthy. We can only see what he's going to do when that offense is fully firing. Lamar Jackson didn't have a great game. He had 6 targets, 4 catches, 30 yards. A very modest workload, but one that I expect to grow over the coming weeks, and I would say to put in your claim for him now before he explodes.
I think he could absolutely explode. Speaking of explode on your lineups, he's very explosive in general. He's an athletic freak, and I'm surprised he wasn't drafted earlier from where he was actually picked at 28. Now, that Ravens offense we've seen struggle with receiving, just like the Lions. However, the Ravens seem to have a little bit more help, at least with the emergence of Hollywood Brown, really cementing his role as a wide receiver 1 on the Ravens. But I do think that Hollywood owners should be wary of Rashad Bateman's return. I do think that's going to take away from his game. I think they're going to be more of a modest, 2-2 combo.
Absolutely. And again, Rashad Bateman coming back from injury, I want to emphasize that he's a guy who I can see stretching the field like he did at Minnesota. You mentioned he went 28th. We were expecting him to go somewhere around 21, and he was actually mocked to the Dolphins multiple times at number 18.
Yeah, and I would have been Sewell and Rashad Bateman sounded nice, but we have Waddle and Jalen Phillips, which pretty good.
I'm okay with it. I would have rather Sewell than Bateman, but
Probably.
whatever. At this point, it doesn't matter.
People would.
Jose, who are you starting across all your formats this week?
So my starter of the week is Courtland Sutton. A lot of people think of him as sort of a boom or bust player, but lately he's been extremely good. He's coming off of a 14-target game with 8 receptions for 94 yards and 1 touchdown. He also has 2 straight games with above 10 targets and over 20 points. This week he has a favorable matchup against the Browns, and last week he was targeted, I think, on 28% of Teddy Bridgewater's attempts. So I think he's bound to have a really good week.
A healthy target share for sure, and that receiving core is almost decimated with injury. We see him and Noah Fant as the legit 1-2 combo on that team, along with Tim Patrick, but obviously Jerry Jeudy has been out for a while now, and we continue to see KJ Hamler is also out. We'll see if Courtland Sutton can keep it up this week.
We've seen him before. Courtland Sutton is super talented. I believe it was 2019 where he really broke out. That's where he got his Pro Bowl selection, and that's where he cemented his name as a wide receiver 1. And last year, he fell due to an ACL injury, and he's proven that he can bounce back. Now, I do think once Jeudy returns, that Courtland Sutton's going to be more of a will I, won't I kind of situation.
Borderline flex play, maybe.
Borderline. I'd say he's a flex as of right now. But Courtland Sutton is very talented, super good. He's clearly Teddy Bridgewater's favorite target, coming off 2 back-to-back weeks with over 10 targets. So Courtland Sutton will continue to produce, or at least he should continue to produce.
Absolutely. And Fraga, who's your start of the week?
We mentioned this name, I don't know, like a minute ago. But I'm going to go with Waddle, baby. Now, oh my God, I'm falling into a deeper and deeper and deeper abyss every time I mention a Dolphins player, and I think there's a curse, and maybe that's why we're losing.
We're about 0 for 3 when we say to start or pick up a Dolphins player on waiver
We don't
wire.
talk about it.
Just saying.
Anyways, Waddle. Now that Tua's back and really taking his job back, it's not that he lost it, but he was hurt, and now that Tua's back, I believe that Alabama connection is gonna be there. I believe it's gonna be super strong. With 13, he had 13 targets last week, 10 catches, 70 yards, and 2 touchdowns, amounting to 29 points. And not only that, they have a very strong matchup next week against a bad Falcon secondary. I still expect the Dolphins to lose now because I'm just borderline depressed. But, hey, I expect a big game from Waddle.
Yeah, and the return of the RPO to the offense is definitely helping Waddle. That's how they're using him. They're using him as a short route-running type of guy, which I don't understand because we see how good of a deep threat he is. I don't know if it's something against Tua or Waddle himself. But I'd love to see him used a little bit more down the field, and then I would say I could confidently start him in all the leagues that I own him.
I agree. However, with those RPOs, those little short passes, he's so shifty after the catch. He's a really do-it-all guy that he's so electric. He can really get those yards after the catch.
I'm still waiting for him to take one all the way.
I am too. But as long as he gets those solid yards, he can be very solid.
Yeah, and my start of the week this week, Fraga said that his last week was risky. Mine is going to be J.D. McKissic. Now, Fraga's face when I said that, he almost started laughing here on set. J.D. McKissic has been boom or bust this year. He's got 3 games with under 6 points. He's got 3 games with more than 17. Now, J.D. McKissic was able to benefit off of the injury of Antonio Gibson last game. The Green Bay run defense is quite horrendous, if I do say so myself. He was able to achieve 8 carries for 45 yards last game, and he also garnered 8 catches for 65. I think he could get 100 scrimmage yards with at least 5 to 6 catches and cement him as an RB2 for this week.
The reason why Antonio Gibson has been so disappointing this year is because he's not being involved in the receiving game. And that's solely because J.D. McKissic is the receiving back on that team. And which, as we know for running backs, is massive. So he's going to get a lot of points that way.
Yeah, and I was a huge Antonio Gibson fan going into the season, and just seeing J.D. McKissic take away a lot of his reps sort of made me dislike him a lot. But, I mean, I don't think he's a bad option at all to start in your fantasy leagues. But, yeah, I've just never been a really big fan of him just because he caused a lot of disappointment for me this season.
Yeah, and Holzer, who are you sitting? Who do you not like this week?
A lot of people, I feel, will disagree with me on this, but I'm going to go with A.J. Brown. He's coming off of a good week against the Bills, but I think this week against a decent Kansas City Chiefs defense, he's not going to be worth starting. The Chiefs last week clamped Terry McLaurin. I think he had single-digit points. So I think the Chiefs will do that again this week against A.J. Brown, and yeah, I don't think you should start.
Yeah, I think this is one that's a little bit bold, especially coming off the fact that he just had his best week of the season, right when Fraga expected him to do badly. It's tough for me because, again, I love A.J. Brown, and I'm not sure I would want to sit him in my league, especially this week where it could be a high-scoring game. But Terry McLaurin was shadowed pretty much by L'Jarius Sneed the entire game, and it could be that A.J. Brown has the same type of treatment.
I love A.J. Brown, but honestly, one of the main reasons why he got as many points as he did is because the game script and because of how the game was playing. Basically, it was a high-scoring game, and they needed to score fast, especially towards the end when they got the comeback. But in a real not down to the wire game, but it's just that Derrick Henry is averaging currently more than almost 20 yards a game. 20 carries a game. And Derrick Henry, as long as he's gonna get those carries, is part of the reason why A.J. Brown has been so disappointing. It's because game script has more than ever had Derrick Henry run the ball instead of passing the ball.
Yeah, I mean, Derrick Henry has had more than 150 yards in 5 out of his 6 games this year, and especially that they're playing the Chiefs. I think that the way that they can beat the Chiefs efficiently is by running the ball with Derrick Henry and not allowing the Chiefs offense to come onto the field, which could make A.J. Brown a risky play, especially if they only attempt 19-20 passes on the day.
A.J. Brown, for the most part this year, has been boom or bust, more bust than boom. But this week especially screams it, so risky play.
Fargo, who are you sitting across all formats this week?
Speaking of risky, this guy had a very confusing game in my opinion. Chase Edmonds. Now, he has what should be a great matchup against Houston, but my main concern with Chase Edmonds is just how many times that they prefer James Conner over Chase Edmonds. Chase Edmonds is being used more as a versatile receiving back, while James Conner is more of the workhorse back, sorry. And James Conner had, I believe, almost 3 times as many carries as Chase Edmonds did by the end of the game.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough for me. I like Chase Edmonds coming into the year, and I still think he could be good for the rest of the season. But the way that they're splitting the carries is worrying me about that Cardinals backfield.
Yeah, Chase Edmonds with James Conner, I mean, you never know. He could end up having a really good game, but he can also bust, like you said. So, yeah, I don't disagree with that pick at all.
Yeah, and we always talk about targets being important, but did you know that one target is actually less valuable than a red zone carry? Yeah, and you know who gets the red zone carries in that game?
James Conner.
James Conner and Kyler Murray. So I wouldn't expect Chase Edmonds to be running it in from close. Unless he breaks one off, I think that he's a guy who could be sat across your formats.
Most of James Conner's points last week came from one 40-yard run. So,
yeah, and my sit of the week, I'm staying on the running back theme, is actually going to be the Bears running backs, whichever ones actually play this week. We're not sure yet if Damian Williams is going to be able to go, but if not, then I'm going to be sitting Khalil Herbert. They play the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, how many times have we sat running backs against the Buccaneers? And it's won me the league the 2 times that I've done it. Essentially, best run defense in football. The front 7 is incredible, and they surprise me every single week. And I think that the Bears are not going to be able to run the ball. They're going to have to pass it first, second down if they get the third down. A lot of sacks are going to be caught up in that game, and I think throwing the ball is only inevitable for the Chicago Bears this week.
We've already mentioned just how bad that Bears O-line can be, and I think this is a week where they're just going to show it. They play against probably the best, fair to say, best front seven in all of football. So that Bears O-line, even if they have to pass the ball, they're not going to give Justin Fields a lot of time.
Yeah, let's not forget that Bears O-line let 5 sacks from Myles Garrett in
Alone.
one game.
Alone.
They let up 9 sacks against the Browns, and the Browns obviously gotten a little bit more hurt since then, but it was a rough game for them, and I can see that coming this week and next week when they play the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah, they're going to put a lot of pressure. The Bucs are going to put a lot of pressure on Justin Fields and just that whole offense of the Bears, and they're not going to. I don't think they'll succeed at all, whether it comes to the run game or the passing game. Justin Fields struggled last week against the Packers, and that's just going to continue this week.
All right, and that's it. Do you guys have any other thoughts before Week 7?
Fins up, baby. Let's go.
From your Fantasy King, we'll see you next time on the Waiver Wire.
Just wait till next week.